Hey there, gang. This is White Panther coming to you from Tucson, Arizona on a bright and sunny day. Gotta love it. We very rarely get bright sunny days here in Tucson. You smell that? That was sarcasm. With episode 4 of volume 2 of our video series Inside the Panther's Lair. Today we'll be talking about a song called God Opens a Window. This one was particularly difficult to say, but it was also a particularly difficult song to record because of the circumstances that arose just prior to my getting into the studio. I had been having lunch with my buddy Clay Dustin. I think I mentioned to you that Clay is the guy who originally introduced me to the good folks at Draco, where I recorded all the songs from the first demo CD. But we were having lunch, and Clay was reaching for the bill, and he picked up the tab, and as he was reaching to get his wallet out, he tossed his keys up on the table. One of those little dangly things hanging on his key. That's a technical term, dangly thing, by the way. And it had this little saying that said, when God closes a door, he opens a window. And you've heard the expression, one door opens when another one closes. It's been said so many different ways, but just when you think you're being shut out, another opportunity will always present itself. And as always happens, that little key phrase started bouncing around in my head, and basically before I got back to the house after lunch, I pretty much had it written. Wasn't too much or too much later, or too much longer, rather. Boy, I really just cannot speak today, but that's all right. Wasn't too long after that before I had scheduled a studio session to go lay it down. But as does happen on occasion, just got a real odd feeling, a real bad feeling, and decided to reach out to a good buddy of mine back east. I tried reaching out to him on Friday, left him a message, tried reaching out again to him on Saturday, and for one reason or another, we just wound up not connecting. I got some really horrific and sad news on Sunday morning that my buddy had passed away. Met this particular gentleman, Mr. Anthony Saida, who I always, from the day I met him, referred to as Mr. Tony. People come into your life under varying circumstances. And although the particular event that was the cause of my encountering my good friend is debatable as to, good Lord, how do I say this without getting myself in more trouble than I'm already in? Mr. Tony had a wedding band. Not just a band on the finger, a musical band. And we had actually hired him out to perform at my wedding. Now, my ex had already seen him a couple of times, but for one reason or another, work was just too much, and I never got around to seeing him. Well, I sat down during one of his showcases, and we just clicked. He was an all-around entertainer. He was never satisfied unless everyone in the house had a smile on their face. That's something that on rare occasion when I do perform, I try to do the same thing. But right after the showcase, we sat down and looked him in the eye and said, well, there's two things. Number one, you're going to tell me that you have our particular date available. Number two, if you do not have our particular date available, you're going to call whoever you have booked on that day and give them your condolences, because there's no way you're going to be anywhere else but performing at my wedding. And thus began the relationship. We went to multiple showcases, even after we'd already booked the band. Got to be very, very good friends with the band. Got to be very, very good friends with his family and his friends. And just a great, great all-around guy. So I mentioned that I had gotten news that Mr. Tony had passed on Sunday. And I had a recording session scheduled for Monday. Now, one of the reasons that I called him, aside from getting that odd, bad feeling that I had, was I wanted to tell him about the song. It was interesting. It was a little bit of a departure from some of the stuff that I usually do. And we were hoping at some point in time down the road to sit down and bang out a couple of songs together. But sadly, never actually came to fruition. But I went into the studio, and George could immediately tell something was wrong. So I let him know, and I let him know that the song was I was basically going to do it for Mr. Tony. It originally had a little bit more of an up-tempo feel to it, but under the circumstances, that didn't quite feel right. But at the same time, it didn't feel like it should be done quite as ballad either. So we kind of messed around a little bit and tried to find just the right feel. Something soulful, something that leaves you just a little uneasy as you follow along. George managed to find just the right feel on the guitar to accomplish what I was shooting for, as he always does. And I swear I say this all the time, and I still don't say it enough. That the guy's an absolute magician. If he can make me sound as good as I sound, I can only imagine what he can do with someone that has some real talent. But anyway, while we were laying it down and we got down to scratch vocals, and we were just playing with lots of little accents here and there, and he got this buzz in his ear, and he immediately reached for the keyboard and was going for what you'll hear in a couple of my songs are some keypads that have kind of like a sound of choir in the background, and that didn't really quite feel right. And we just started messing around and came up with that haunting little da 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 da. And he found the right voice on the keyboard to lay that down, and that kind of is always kind of sprinkled there throughout the background of the song. It's one of those things where, although the way we ultimately laid the song down is not quite how I conceived it, you know, I've said that music always evolves and becomes what it always should have been. So in the end, when we finally finished up the track, as difficult as it was to smile at the accomplishment, still left me just a little sad at the loss of my friend. So this one is now and will always be for my good friend Mr. Tony. I only wish that he could have gotten to hear it. So with that, this is White Panther, as always, asking you to keep music in your hearts. And may God bless you. Hope you enjoy God Opens a Window.
This one's for you, Mr. Tony. Me, I done messed up more times than I can count. They all try to pull me in when all I want is out. Had so many doors been slammed right in my face, but I thank the Lord for His amazing grace. God opens up a window when somebody shuts the door. You know, the less I think of me, He just shows me so much more that I can do with the rest of my life. God opens a window. Now it can sure feel like you've always been shut down, and that every time you try you end up looking like a clown. No matter how many doors get slammed right in your face, you can just ask the Lord for His amazing grace. God opens up a window when somebody shuts the door. You know, the less I think of me, He just shows me so much more that I can do with the rest of my life. God opens a window, opens a window. People's faiths, they get tested every day when they forget how to drop down on their knees and pray. But if you ever feel like giving up and you should lose your way, God opens a window, opens a window, opens a window. At the times when I am suffering the most, I just give it all up to the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And I care less about the door slammed in my face, because the Lord, He blesses me with His amazing grace. God opens up a window when somebody shuts the door. You know, the less I think of me, He just shows me so much more that I can do with the rest of my life. God opens a window, opens a window, opens a window. God opens a window, opens a window, opens a window. God opens a window, opens a window, opens a window. God opens a window.